Okay, this is just gonna be a quick little bonus video because I just watched the first episode of Now Apocalypse and I have so many thoughts. I want to start this off by saying I'm not here to disrespect anyone in the show, anyone who made the show, anyone who likes the show. I like this show. I don't get it, but I like this show and I'm gonna keep watching it. I'm gonna watch this whole season. Do I think it'll get renewed for a second season? We'll see. The first thing that stuck out to me about Now Apocalypse, well, the very, very first thing was that it was gay. I saw someone talking about how Abigail Gia and Tyler Posey were going to be in a relationship in the show. And as someone who loves Victorious and someone who's seen a lot of gifs on Tumblr about Teen Wolf, I'm a big fan of both of them. So that's what really drew me to the show. And it was like, I need to see what's going on. I made a post about this on Tumblr. And I think it's pretty obvious when you watch the show, if you've ever talked to like any human ever, that these people don't like write real humans. Like, no one in this show looks like they exist in this world, and they don't talk like people do either. And it's really off-putting because they'll just say something like wild and dramatic or like really deep and edgy and it will make no sense. But because they're like cool, edgy millennials, that's just apparently what they sound like. And I'm like, it's not true. And this show has a TV MA rating, which is basically like an R in like movie rating. So it's like pretty up there. And you can tell that they took that rating and they ran with it because there's so many times where there's like profanity in the show that makes no sense. And like, it's not actually there because that's how people talk. They just do it because they are able to. So they just like put in swears wherever they can, and it's weird and it's not how people talk. And there's also just like there's so many weird moments that are so clearly what old people think millennials talk about and are like that just like aren't true. Like there's this whole line where Abed talks about how he's a double Scorpio and that means he's the most psychic of signs, and I'm like, yeah, valid, but also that's so like clearly a stereotypical millennial thing because all millennials care about like spirituality and all of these like zodiac signs, and everyone's like, oh, those are so stupid, they don't make any sense, but of course he does because he's a millennial. It's weird and it's like not an actual thing. Like people don't have conversations like this. And there's this whole moment where Ford and his girlfriend, who I still don't really know the name of, is talking about like relationships, and she goes on this whole like deep tangent about how monogamy isn't like true to how humans have like evolved to be. And like people talk about this online because it's like an idea that has been backed up by like sources and stuff. But like in real life conversations, no one just has this information and spews it out to their significant other. And then she continues by talking about how much she loves him and how she thinks he's wonderful. But then she starts talking about how much she like loves his dick. And she says it so matter-of-factly that it's like no one just says that. Like, it's not, no human really talks this way. I just feel like it was written by people who have like only interacted with young people via the internet. And I don't think old people realize that how young people interact on the internet is different from how we interact with people in real life. So I think they've just taken a bunch of internet ideas and put it into real life where it doesn't fit because it's different mediums of communication, and therefore the communication is different. It's just very odd to watch because every once in a while I have to like pause and be like, well, what are they talking about? Because it's just so off-putting because it's not real human dialogue. The only scene that I feel like was written by a real person was the scene outside the restaurant with Ulysses and Gabriel. Like, but they were talking about how the hookup culture leaves them feeling like empty and how they want to have a real relationship. And then Gabriel talks about how he has to go to like his band practice. That felt grounded in reality. That felt like a real conversation that real people would have. And there were swears in that. They said fuck, but it felt like natural to how people talk. That scene, I feel like was written by a different person because it does not fit the writing of the rest of the episode that I saw. So that scene really normal, and I was like, okay, I can get on board with this, but the rest of it was like, what is going on? They also have such a weird sense of fashion, and I think again they're drawing off of like Instagram models and like how people portray their fashion to be as really like edgy and full of color and patterns, except when you look at it with these people, it's like no one really dresses like that. Like there's this whole part where Carly is like laying on her couch in like a tube top and like leggings, but they're so, like, they're obviously, like, really bold choices, but they don't go together, like, at all. I feel like there's a lot of moments in the show where they try to do something, like, bold and outrageous and out there to be like, we're different, we're an edgy show. And I'm like, I get it, okay? But, like, there doesn't seem to be, like, a plot yet. It's the first episode. So, like, I don't know. The first episode really should, you know, outline what the whole story is going to be about, and I don't get what's going on. And I feel like that's the point, but also I don't understand what is happening. And the first episode should really be the one to draw the people in and be like, oh, I get what's going on, and I get what I'm going to get into if I continue to watch the show. Like, confusing your audience in the first episode is not the way to keep viewers, but I'm gonna watch it. So there's just, like, a lot of moments where it doesn't feel real. Like, it doesn't feel like this is a thing set on Earth. And maybe that's what they're going for. It feels like very much an absurdist form of media where it's just really out there and they're not trying to be realistic. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm on board for that. But I can't tell because there's moments where it feels like they're trying to be, like, relatable to millennials, because there's so many scenes where they're talking about smoking weed because that's all millennials do. It's clear that the writers aren't millennials themselves. You know, like, there's this whole part in one of the trailers where Carly is talking about how I'm a millennial, so sexual fluidity is kind of my thing. And I'm like, first of all, no one talks like that. And that's so clearly how old people think millennials are. Like, that's not an actual thing that a millennial would say. And I'm not saying any of this is bad. I'm just saying it's weird and I'm confused. And also, there are, like, lizard people? That's what really made me think that this isn't supposed to be, like, a real drama where it's, like, based off of, like, real life, and it's supposed to be a thing that, like, reflects, like, real society, even though it feels like there's supposed to be some sort of societal commentary about how people believe the world is ending and how people should be more involved. Because there's this whole monologue at the beginning where Ulysses is talking about how people could just become so complacent in, like, the fuckery of the world. So I feel like that's the social commentary they're trying to go for. But literally in the last scene of the first episode, there's this lizard person. And I don't understand. It's so weird. And I love it, but it's weird. And I didn't know this before because I didn't watch any trailers, because I'm not here for spoilers. But I went back and I watched the trailer after I watched the first episode, and it's just lizard people, and I don't get it. I don't understand. It's just a really weird show, and I'm going to watch it because I like how outrageous it is, but I don't understand if it's trying to not be relatable but also be, it's weird. It's a weird mix of trying to be like, oh, we're real millennials, we dress kind of crazy and we smoke weed because we're relatable, and then there's lizard people, and I'm like, is this supposed to be grounded in reality or not? I don't get it, but I enjoy it. I'm just very confused. But now, let's talk about the characters, because I am in love with the characters. I feel like every character, despite not talking like a real person, could be a real person if they just didn't speak. Let's start with Ulysses, or Ulysses. I don't know how you pronounce that name. It's a weird name. But Avid Jogia's character. I love a show with a leading man of color. We live for positive representation. So I'm already supporting the show. I love Avid Jogia. I have loved Victorious, so I'm so happy to see him in more stuff. His outfits teeter on not realistic to me, just because I feel like they look like what real people would wear in, like, a teen drama. Like, his outfits look a bit too nice, especially since he said he was going to be short on rent. I feel like his clothes are a bit too nice for apparently, like, a broke millennial. But his clothes, more so than others, feel like something that a real person would wear. I feel like he's really marketing towards that millennial, we smoke weed, we're cool demographic, with how many times he was vaping throughout the show. But, like, it's cool. We could have a character that does that. It's not illegal. Decriminalizing marijuana, I'm all for it. But, like, it didn't seem like it added to anything. It just felt like he was smoking weed because that's what millennials do, not because it made any sense with, like, his character or the plot or anything. But, like, maybe it will. It's really just the first episode, so none of my opinions really matter. But this is what I'm thinking so far. I liked how he's a vlogger, how he said he's not a vlogger, but he's a vlogger. I live for that. I like how he had the whole explanation thing and he talked about the Kinsey scale and he was a 4 because that means that like someone did some research into queer culture and I respect and appreciate that. But that also means that he is not just a queer character for the sake of getting in queer audiences and they're actually going to make him queer. I live for that. Because there are so many shows, cough cough Riverdale, that try to get in queer audiences by like saying, oh, this character might be queer and just queer baiting. That's not here for that. Or they have like a queer character that's like never in the show just to say that they have queer characters. And that's really annoying. But this show has a leading person of color who's also explicitly queer, and we love that. Jacob from Glee? No! Wait, what? Oh, we haven't met him yet? Oh, I'm so excited. Sorry, I have the IMDb page open for the show and I was looking through the list of people to figure out who Carly's boyfriend's name is. And apparently Jacob Artist is going to be on the show. And he played Puck's little brother in Glee. So I'm so excited to see him. But I'm enjoying his character. I feel like just because he's the main character, he seems the weirdest to me. But I'm still like, I'm on board with his weirdness because we see him the most in the show so far. So like, there's the whole scene where he's talking to Carly at like their froyo place that wasn't really explained. I think she might work there. I don't know. And like their whole conversation about their relationships was like weird, but like not unheard of. They were clearly writing that scene to like amp up the shock value because the things that they were talking about were very much for mature audiences, but it didn't seem like a conversation that would never happen. It just was an odd conversation for people to just casually have outside of a froyo place. So, I don't know. His relationship with Carly isn't really explained yet, so I don't know how close they are. So maybe that's just a normal thing, because if you're like really close with someone, that conversation can happen. But it just seemed odd. But you know what was really wild was once Ulysses is done with his first little monologue thing, it just cuts real sharply to him having sex with this guy who is cheating on his husband with him, which was really wild. He is the side hoe, and that was crazy. That, you know, they're not playing around. And I can respect that. It was weird and it was very jarring, but I think that's what they wanted to happen. And he showed that he used a condom, which is safe sex, and we always support. I don't know. He didn't really have much going on besides meeting up with Gabriel and them making out. I think like when they were talking about how they were connected by fate, it's supposed to connect to the overall plot, but I don't know or get what the overall plot is. But they're cute. I love how 2 out of the 3 of the relationships established in the show are interracial, and I love how one of them's queer. Like, we're living for that. But we're moving on to Carly, because Carly was really wild. Because first of all, I didn't know that her character was played by Kelly Berglund. This girl named Kelly. Never seen her before. I thought for like the first 20 minutes before I stopped to like look up who was in the show, I thought she was Whitney Moore, but like look at these pictures of them side by side. Tell me they don't look exactly the same. I really thought for like the first 20 minutes of just seeing her that was Whitney Moore. It's not, but it's really messing me up that it's not her because it looks so much like her and my brain has already been trained to be like, that's Whitney, but it's not. So that was really crazy. Her character, I feel like, I don't know if it's just we haven't seen a lot of her, but I feel like she's really just sort of that archetype for a struggling artist millennial. I don't see much else to her character yet. I feel like a lot of her lines make more sense than the rest of the other lines. Like her relationship with Jethro is very realistic. I feel like she really needs to break up with him because he is not bringing her joy. The fact that she cams on the side, you know, it's very much a profession that people have. It's not unrealistic. She is showing autonomy over herself and her body, and we respect that. Because it's not shown as like a negative thing. Like she seems to be fine with doing that. She also has a friend that she had a conversation with, and their conversation about Tinder seemed realistic. I feel like it was again just sort of like a typical millennial experience that they had to include because this is a millennial show marketed towards millennials, but it was very much a realistic experience. I feel like, again, her character is meant to add more shock value to the show, because it's like, ooh, she's a cam girl. You can see her tits. It's like, ooh, it's edgy, it's scandalous, but it's also just sort of like, okay. I feel like they're edgy without having a point to being edgy. It's like the edginess is not serving a greater purpose other than being like, look at us, we're edgy, we're cool, come watch our show. So I hope there's a point to all this, but we're gonna move on to one of my favorite characters, honestly, Ford. I adore him. He seems so stupid and I love it. He's so sweet and he's like genuinely like a good person. I don't see anything bad about him yet. First of all, his name's Ford, which is really weird. It adds to the whole idea around the show not being real. Because to me, that's not a real name, but it's his name. He's like a struggling screenwriter, and he's like writing in this whole cafe thing, and this guy comes over and he's a producer and he offers him his card. And that was a bit sketchy. I feel like that guy was very much coming on to him and Ford just couldn't see it because he's like straight boy blind, but like, we'll see. Maybe that wasn't true. But I feel like with the way that they were, it just seemed like that's what's going to happen, and they may have to put in a scene where Ford has to sleep with him in order to get his like script produced. I don't want that to happen, but I feel like that's what they're setting up to have happen, so we'll see. But Ford is so sweet. Him and Severine are literally adorable. I don't like Severine. She's truly not written like a real person. I feel like her and her weird high security corporation are the lizard people, because she does not talk like a human. And it's not just because they wrote her like a weird foreign character. She just truly does not talk or act like a human. And it's because she's a lizard person. But Ford, so sweet. He like goes on this hike with Ulysses and he says, it's cool that you can't pay the rent. I have the rich parents. It's all good, bro. And then he goes back home to hang out with Severine and he is cooking dinner? What? When have you ever seen a man cook dinner? So that was already like, wow. Ford, good guy. And then he's like vulnerable and like actively talking about the relationship. And he's like, is it okay if I call you my girlfriend? And not just assuming, because he wants to be on the same page with her. Respect. We love that. And then he goes on to ask if it's because he's not smart enough for her, because he can show his vulnerable side. And I love him. He's so sweet. After his girlfriend basically says, we shouldn't be monogamous, he opens it up to an open relationship because he knows that's what she wants, because he cares and is willing to compromise for the sake of the relationship. And he's so sweet. And I just love him. He actually seems like a good person. Maybe it's because he's the only person that's seemingly written with like depth. Like, we saw layers to him. Like, he was given layers. He is like an idiot straight guy who your first impression is of him fucking his girlfriend on the couch. But then he's also seeming to be like a caring and respectful boyfriend. So far, Ford's kind of my favorite. Which is like kind of an awful thing to say in a show full of like all this representation. But you know, Ford's written the best so far. His girlfriend, Severine, a lizard person. I'm calling it right now, she's a lizard person. There was that whole scene where Ulysses and Ford are having a hike or whatever, and then there's this weird, not real dream sequence that isn't clearly lined up to be a dream sequence where they make out, and then it just like cuts to the fact that it didn't really happen and Ulysses was just daydreaming. That was weird. I don't get why that happened. I think it's just to show that like he's into him. So maybe it's laying the groundwork, because later they may hook up, because Ford did just open their relationship to an open relationship. They may bring Ulysses in for like a threesome. We'll see. I feel like that's what that was explaining, because I don't get why else they would need to have that, because it was already explained that they hooked up once in freshman year and Ford is straight. So I don't get what was the need of that scene other than to lay groundwork to be like, oh yes, it makes sense why they are hooking up later. I don't know. That scene was weird. I didn't get why that was necessary for the story. But I honestly don't get what the story is yet. Also, right after the whole weird scene between Ford and Severine, where Severine just sort of talks and she doesn't sound like a person, I was like, who wrote this show? Because it didn't seem like they knew how to write people, and I could clearly tell that it was giving me strong like Riverdale vibes, where it's like edgy just for the sake of being edgy. Like, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. You ever see me without this stupid hat? That's weird. Like, it was writing like that, where it's like, no one talks like this. So I looked it up, and the writer-director of the show has directed Riverdale, 13 Reasons Why, and the Heathers reboot. Those are his 3 most recent credits after Now Apocalypse. And I was like, oh, I get it now. It makes a lot of sense why this show is this way. And like, I was gonna say I'm not trying to hate on those 3 shows, but I am. I don't like them. They're bad shows. So I'm hoping that the show isn't bad, but so far it's not like good. It's not like, wow, this is good writing and good storytelling, because I don't get what they're trying to tell. So worried about the show, but I want it to do well. And also the second writer on the show, she has only written like sex heavy media, like shows about sex, and you can see that this is the product of those 2 working together. It's very clear where they all contributed to the show. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, just saying it's kind of obvious, where it's like there's really graphic and dramatic sexual elements to the show. I can tell that those are her influences. That's fine. That's the show that they want to put on. I will watch it. That's all I have to say about the show right now. I know that this video was super long. This video was supposed to be like 10 minutes, but I had a lot of thoughts. I'm going to be watching this show more. Maybe I'll make more videos on it. Who knows? I really wasn't expecting this show to be this weird, so it really just like messed me up and I had to talk about it. Also, if Severine doesn't end up being a lizard person, I will feel betrayed. With Avon and Tyler, I don't know the characters' names. It's Ulysses and Gabriel. I do know the characters' names. I don't know why I said that.